Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
America the Beautiful, a land of opportunity, a country of freedom, honor, dignity, and justice for all. As parents, we want to leave a brighter future and a legacy of hope for our children. In America, anything is possible. But is the American dream still alive?
I'm not a young man. I don't think the America that I live in is anything like the America I was grown up to believe in.
I've never felt like true representation.
I think there's a lot of shady things that go on behind doors.
In politics, it's a bunch of crap.
I feel like a lot of the politicians, they base most of their decisions on money.
Judy Frankel is a mom for a special needs child. She recognizes a need to change the way our voices are heard in Washington. Judy created WriteIndependent.org, a nonpartisan website that gives candidates a way to run for office without spending a fortune and gives people a direct line of communication to candidates before they are elected.
The vote is the most crucial thing. We need, as people, to stand up against money in politics and vote in people who care about our future and our children's future. And the only way we're going to do that is if we vote into office people who really care about what we as people care about, and not about lining their pockets or making the incredibly wealthy corporations rich. We've lost a lot of trust in our government. If power keeps going the way it's going, we corrupt our government and we won't have a government anymore. It'll be run by these powerful corporations and these wealthy individuals instead of the people. What we have to do is look at the politicians that pledge in advance of getting into office that they're going to fix this problem of money in politics.
International consulting economist and three-time Republican congressional candidate Peter Bearse endorses WriteIndependent.org.
If we don't get big money out of politics, there's less and less reason to pay attention to ordinary folks.
Right now, 47% of Congress are millionaires.
Do you know the wealthiest part of the country is the Washington, D.C. district? Do you know that the Washington, D.C. district, in contrast to the rest of the country, has been immune to the downturn forces of the Great Recession? The members of Congress are not suffering at all.
You shouldn't run for Congress in order to get rich.
Do you think people are doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Members of Congress do not walk in your shoes. They walk in Gucci loafers. Most members of Congress go there with good intentions. But it's so easy to be co-opted by the system because 2 years pass pretty quickly, and you stop and think, gee, if I don't raise a lot of money, I'll never be reelected in 2 years, and I can't accomplish anything.
Americans, we don't have the time to sit down and actually look at who took money from whom and then how they vote.
It's somewhat my own fault because I don't pay attention.
We don't care enough. We don't care about what's happening to our world.
WriteIndependent.org does care and makes getting involved easy. The website has an idea page where we the people have the opportunity to post our solutions to current issues.
Why do people count so little? Is because big money has come to count so much. You've got the system now dominated by what I call the four bigs and their close interactions with each other. Big money, big government, big business, and big media. Where is the little guy? Where is we the people, the first three words of our Constitution?
In order for we the people to be heard, we must stop allowing big money to sway the vote in Washington. The strategy? Limits campaign contributions to $100 per person or entity and convince voters to only endorse representatives who have signed her pledge for honest candidates.
Judy Frankel from WriteIndependent.org. You know, that some might call you naive, Judy.
I'm the person that makes you feel that anything's possible.
Yes, but people are scared. Their 401ks have been depleted. They're worried about their son or daughter finally moving out of the house now that they're 30. People are looking for jobs. They want to know how this relates to them.
The most important thing, obviously, is information. So if you want to know who's running in your district and who's signed this pledge to take money out of politics, you have to have somewhere to go. And what I'm recommending to people is only vote for pledge signers.
I signed the pledge because I'm such a firm believer that if we don't get money out of politics, that we will never improve the country. It's that simple.
I think it's a tremendous idea. I think that this money thing has gotten so out of control.
It would probably be a lot different. We wouldn't have as many like angry people. Like it would be more peaceful.
It gives me hope that we're trying to look at this idea and give it serious consideration.
Everything would be different because then we would have more trust in our government.
Our country would be totally different. It'd be like night and day.
Oh, that'd be heaven on earth.
To find an honest candidate running in your district, go to writeindependent.org. Click on Candidates and find your state. Then, click on your congressional district. Signers are listed with a red star and sign the pledge by their name.
I'm running for Congress because the country is in a lot of trouble. And the people we have in Congress right now are self-serving, and they're never going to correct things.
Lincoln said, "We here bear the responsibility and have the power."
The people have the power. All we have to do is stand up for ourselves and say, I'm not going to take this anymore.
That's what we need, a voice.
If you stand for a cause and if you like join that cause, like your voice could be heard. And I think nowadays it's extremely important to have a voice.
If there was no money in politics, all our votes, every individual out here, their votes would count more. Oh, absolutely.
I have hope. Yeah, if you don't have hope, then why live?
Everybody's voice is important. It starts with one.
One person's a start.
This building belongs to us. The time is now to put responsible representatives to work in our government. Ask your candidate to sign the pledge. If they won't sign, let them know that you won't vote for them unless they do. There are two alternatives. Staying on this course could have disastrous effects on our nation. It could bring irreversible harm to our children and families. Not only loss of jobs, homes, and savings, but a loss of our spiritual values. Or we could fix it by changing our course and creating confidence in our future. We, the people, need to rise again, to get involved, to bring back our United States to its former glory. We ask for your support by voting for decent, honest people on Election Day. And please donate today at writeindependent.org, because anything is possible.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Representative Kevin Avard, and I have Peter Bearse. Is it Bearse?
It's Bearse.
Bearse, PhD.
Right.
You're an economist, an independent economist. And I want to welcome you to Speak Up. You know, we were just talking off camera, but you ran for Congress last term, and you came 4th out of 8, and you were running in the 1st district here in New Hampshire. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of your observations about running and the average people and the inequity of society and average people running for Congress or for Senate, but primarily Congress. And that's pretty much why you're here. You want to talk about the inequity of it all. And I just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So you're a PhD. You have a... Where did you get your PhD, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I got my PhD from the New School for Social Research in New York, which had a very fine economics department and still does. And that was after graduating from Harvard with a degree in math. And, you know, I worked a couple of years for IBM, my first job, and thought, gee whiz, what am I going to do now? I had an interest in social sciences. I said, well, what am I, you know, if I want to get an advanced degree, maybe I better do it in a field where I can put my math to work. And of course, that led me to economics.
Right. Now, and you're an independent economic consultant.
Right.
Okay. And you consult for do you mind saying who you consult for, or is it just?
Well, it's been mostly, it's been a mixture of public and private. It used to be a better mix in the past, and also a good balance between research projects and practical work. for companies, but I actually did a lot of work for business trade associations, industry groups, on the private side, more so than individual companies.
Mm-hmm.
Although individually, I always like to work for small companies, especially small manufacturing companies. And then on the public side, I did a lot of work for international development organizations, World Bank, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, United Nations Development Program, and of course, USAID, our very own agency for international development, which does projects all over the world.
Okay. So you're well versed in economics, obviously.
And I worked in 15 different countries.
Right. And you ran for Congress.
Yeah.
And tell me about your observations when you ran for Congress. We were talking off camera about, again, the inequity of it all, and we're looking at ancient Rome and the latter part of it. And is our society heading that way?
I wish I could say no. I'm worried. That doesn't mean I'm a naysayer or, I believe in forecasting dismal things. First of all, I'm not a forecaster.
Right.
I'm really a development economist, and I have a very positive, optimistic outlook because I'm always trying to help businesses and industries and communities move forward with their development plans. In fact, concoct development strategies, which is the name of my consulting company. But things are not going well in this country, and that people aren't being told the truth. And if you don't tell people the truth and say, look, you can make a difference, then all bets are off. Because right now, look, don't make me out to be a victim, I'm not. But I think the general run of people, especially the middle class, and always, the poor who are always with us, the bottom of the heap, they're always got what Rumpy got for Christmas. But the middle class has been immiserated and victimized over this recession, as the candidates have said. But they don't have any solutions, you see. And one of the reasons they don't have any solutions, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. We're going to talk about them. Is that the people are at least half of the people are asleep at the switch. And the candidates, one thing I have criticized about the candidates at all levels, I'll accept you because we've talked a little bit, is that they're not recognizing that the basic problem is you've got to get people back in the process because it's not their politics anymore. It's the politics of big money and of the pros and of the political junkies and the already politically self-interested that are driving politics. And the parties really, they used to be reaching out to people to get them to register to vote. Voter registration for me, when I was growing up politically, was always very important. It gave me a chance to meet folks. I go knocking on doors. I find who wasn't registered, got them registered. I didn't give a damn what party they were registering for, just as long as they had the right to vote.
You wanted involvement in the discussion.
That's been my approach, even though I'm a Republican. And the parties dropped the ball long ago on voter registration. So both parties are not building their base. And by the way, I've been in both parties. I worked in both parties. I worked for 25 years as a Democrat. And I was always activist. I was an activist Democrat. And then I was influenced by Reagan in the mid-'80s. And
who was a Democrat prior? At some point, he was a Democrat.
Yeah, right. That's a good reminder. And then it was in early 1987 that I switched parties. And I've been an activist Republican ever since. I was on the New Hampshire GOP Platform Committee. I introduced a couple of resolutions that were voted down with a resounding thud. But it was a good experience, and we have some friends, some common friends, shared friends in the Republican Party. You and I both. Mm-hmm. A lot of good folks, but
many of them have appeared on the show. Mark Warden, Seth Cohn, Andrew Manous, J.R. Hole, some of my colleagues that we worked with, Don Gorman. Eventually he'll come on.
Paul Mirsky.
Paul Mirsky, yeah.
And Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, he hasn't been on the show yet. We're going to get him on pretty soon.
Yeah, he should.
So one of
the parties are part of the problem. They're not part of the solution.
One of your statements was that
both.
the people aren't being told the truth. And what is that truth that they're not being told? Is it the 30-second sound bites that where everybody's getting their information from?
No, the basic truth, and you're not hearing from the candidates at any level, is that the free market ain't free any more than democracy is free. You know the price of liberty. You're a libertarian, Republican, and I'm happy to know that. But the free market only works well if you take full account of the cost of doing business. You're not doing that, and I'm going to say something which you won't agree with. I hope you might, but even though I'm not a forecaster, I suspect you won't. And that is that, and this is why one of the resolutions I introduced to the New Hampshire Republican GOP platform committee went down with a thud, and that is the party has never, still to this day, doesn't recognize that global warming is a serious problem and that we've got to take some responsibility for what's going on. Well, that's the cost of business, that's the key cost of business, which is not accounted for in either the national income and product accounts or the cost of doing business in industry. Although some major corporations are beginning to take that into account, trying to make themselves green companies, you know what I mean?
Do you think China and Russia and India are taking these things into account by any chance?
China is. China has just mounted a significant carbon market to take into account the cost of carbon. And we had the beginning of that under Reggie in a small way, on a regional basis, you know, as a small regional cap and trade program. Although I was never in favor of cap and trade. I think the real answer is a carbon tax. But that's just one example how the free market doesn't work if you don't take full account of the costs of doing business. Mm-hmm. Okay? If you do, then it works well. I mean, it's a powerful mechanism, no question. But this is one respect in which the free market isn't free. The other thing is that there's too much big money in politics, which has corrupted the whole process. And it not only makes it impossible for ordinary people to run, but even those who get into Congress with good intentions will get captured by the system. And the first thing they start doing when they're elected is they start trying to raise money at the minimum rate of $10,000 a week, and just in order
to get reelected.
To get reelected. And that's their concern from day one. Best of intentions get distracted by the fundraising, the big money costs of campaigns, which are escalating exponentially, like this, much faster than the cost of living, which is the CPI.
Right. It's big money.
And that's been true for decades.
What's the solution? How do we change the big money in the program?
Well, I think the number one issue, which should be an issue for every candidate at every level, is the corruption of politics and government by big money, and that we've got to get big money out of politics. And that's the key to a better politics, and without a better politics, you don't have a better government.
Well, one of the things that seems...
Now, we can talk about how, but let's...
One of the things that seems to be pervasive is this thing called the federal government. And they have a lot of money, the feds. Mm-hmm. And
big government.
Big government.
Let's call it what it is. It's big government.
And what they do is they extract money out of the taxpayer, and they give it back to the taxpayer in the form of grants or in form of incentives or programs, whatever, whether it's education, whether it's child and family services, whether it's the legal system. They give back the money, but with some strings attached, whether it's No Child Left Behind. Everywhere you turn, whether it's foster care, everywhere, there's big money.
And there's strings.
And there's strings. And a lot of people don't realize that every time they say, yes, the federal government's going to give us some money, just remember, this has always been, since I was a child.
It's our money.
What is an Indian giver? and that's not a popular statement, but what is an Indian giver? That's a federal government. They're Indian givers.
Right. I haven't heard that in a long time. We used to use that a lot growing up.
Indian giver, you took it back.
Right.
Or you gave me something with unintended consequences,
and now I'm your slave. And what's happening is the slaves are the people who've actually taken the money from the federal government, and then, of course, there are unfunded mandates, because sometimes the federal government never comes through.
Unfunded mandates in New Hampshire are unconstitutional.
Tell me it doesn't happen.
Right.
So what we're finding is that's, in my opinion, there's a lot of incentive to glean from the federal government, and unless that's fixed, in my opinion, we're going down a really deep hole.
Well, you know the old saying in the campaign finance reformers, it's follow the money. And by the way, campaign finance reform has failed, which is one reason I'm here. Let's just face it, it's failed. McCain-Feingold has failed. And if we go that route, we're going down the wrong path. And you mentioned incentives. Okay, well, follow the money. You know, the man on the street isn't getting the benefit, by and large, of federal incentives, grants and aid, what have you. It's going mostly to the big boys. And let's look at a rectangle. This is in my new book, by the way. If you want, I'll tell you the title. And people can find it under Amazon. But in this new book, and I'll mention
What's the name of the book?
It's A New American Revolution. The subtitle is How We the People Can Truly Take Back Our Government. Now, you know, I ran 2 years ago, and that was the Tea Party slogan. Well, I took the slogan seriously. Then I wrote a book built on the slogan. That's what it is. Anyway, in that book, you find a rectangle, and it's called the four bigs. There's big money, there's big government, there's big media, and what's the other big? Big business. And you know, I'm sure you do from your experience, that whenever government spends money, it actually depreciates the competitive nature of our economy, because mostly it's the bigs that benefit from the government money.
You're weeding out the competition.
You know, so big government feeds big business. Big business feeds big money feeds big media feed politics, and you know, it's that interactive cycle that's corrupting the system and taking us down the path to God knows where.
One of the things that has troubled me over the last few years is more intensely than ever before, but I've noticed it since I was politically aware. But it is without the free flow of information. And we got the internet, we've got all this, you know, that's wonderful. But this corporate media, I call it, I tag it the liberal corporate media, is hindering the free flow of information.
I'm with you on that.
And a lot of people don't understand that when you're looking at NBC or MSNBC or ABC or Fox News, or these are conglomerates with a very, and they control the free flow of information. How did Obama ever get elected? I have no idea. With all the information that, I'm not a big Obama fan, obviously. But,
and I'm not either.
But the point is that some corporate head said, you know what? We're going to inject our obviously political influence in the free flow of information. We're not going to report on certain stories. And that's doing a great disservice to our country, because a lot of people depend upon the veracity of their journalism. If there's going to be truth in what they're saying. The days of Walter Cronkite, I didn't know he was a liberal until years later. You know, I didn't.
No, I didn't either.
But I guess the point is that there needs to be a new media that isn't so, and I don't know how we're going to do that, but a media that is free from corruption, from big money.
Well, we touched earlier off camera that people aren't being told the truth. That's what you're driving at.
Right. And that allows the big boys to take cover, because they're influenced, you know.
And you can't even find, just talking about some of the big money, that which has been set loose by the Supreme Court decision. Super PACs. You know, there are many of those, you can't even tell who the donors are.
Right, because they're just put your money into the big PAC.
So, you know, transparency doesn't mean bumpkus.
Well, I guess that recently there's some reporting that there's some money coming from other nations into the Obama camp right now.
Indeed, because many foreign nations, just for example, are members of major trade associations which have their PACs already set up, and now they're contributing also to super PACs. And some of that foreign money comes through the membership right into American politics. The foreign members of the trade association is one channel.
So we're selling out America through these super PACs to some degree.
To some degree.
Right. So
like Saudi Arabia.
You wonder why he bowed to them.
You asked, why did Obama get elected? Look, as my old man used to say, my father used to say, politicians, smart politicians have the gift of gab.
Right.
Well, he's got the gift of gab. And he's also got liberal guilt behind him because he's, he's half black.
Yeah. Well, I know that that movie 2016 is out, and I saw that.
Oh, good. I haven't seen it yet. And
I thought that was very telling on his agenda, Obama's agenda. I've sensed it from day one, and I just don't think that he's out for America. I think he wants to reduce our standing in the world and make it not necessarily a third world country, but an equal playing field. Listen, we have a Constitution, and our Constitution, I love our Constitution. I don't think he gives a rat's kazoo about our Constitution. And I just believe it's a tool it's something that's in his way.
Well, he acts as if Congress is in his way. I mean, how many executive orders have you seen?
Yeah, and how many czars?
I mean, if he runs into a bottleneck or a barrier where Congress says no to any of his wishes, he just issues an executive order, or he does a recess appointment. I mean, he's quite. I'm not here to dump on Obama.
Right.
I think both candidates are bought and sold by big money.
Okay? I won't argue with you. I won't argue.
But then again, I don't think Obama has any real respect for the only branch that's supposed to represent and fight and work for we the people, which is the Congress.
And I've told a lot of people that myself, and that people, you can hammer on Congress all you want, but I don't think people understand that that's their voice.
Exactly.
Here in New Hampshire, we have the House and we have the Senate. Mm-hmm. And there's a new constitutional amendment that's coming up, CACR 26. Mm-hmm. What is that? Well, CACR 26 has to do with, in 1978, the people's voices were taken away from them because of our second part, Article 73A. The Supreme Court justices shall have rulemaking authority with consent of the other justices. That rulemaking authority will be for making rules for the courts. Mm-hmm. On the surface, that sounds really well. Mm-hmm. What was missing in the Constitution, in the document, was the last part of that amendment, which said, "And such promulgated rules shall have the effect of law." So in other words, the Supreme Court justices can make a rule which will eventually have the effect of law.
They're not supposed to be lawmakers.
It's in our Constitution, and that's what happened in 1978. So Representative Mirsky put in a bill to get rid of it, and that wasn't going to work out too well. So what the Supreme Court justices did, they made a compromise, and they wrote some extra language. And all 5 justices agreed with it. But now, if there's a rule which violates a statute or the Constitution, the House will now have the ability to fight some of these rules unless it's constitutional. But if we don't have this, if we don't vote yes on this.
And this is one of the 2 constitutional amendments on the ballot coming up on November 6th.
And getting to what we're talking about is that now the people will be able to say, wait a minute, Your Honor, these court rules don't work. Rule 1.2, which is waiver of rules. Mm-hmm. How does that affect the average citizen? Can you go to a judge and say, Your Honor, this is a bad rule? You can't. How do the people have a voice? Through their House, through their representatives. Exactly. So we want to change that, or add to the amendment allowing the House to say this is a bad rule, and the people have spoken. And so that is what your local representative does. They go to bat for you. They work alongside you. I clean carpets. I work in people's homes. I talk politics all the time. I'm in their face. Our Congress,
I'm smiling because I'm really pleased at what I'm hearing.
Well, every one that I named recently, just who's been on this show, they do the same thing in different varieties. But our congressmen, when was the last time you seen them? How do you get in touch with them? Do you go through the office and then they send you a letter saying, thank you for your comment, and we know this is an important issue to you, we'll get back to you?
Okay, you're touching something very important for me.
Right.
Let me jump in a moment here, because we need to touch on what are solutions to the problems we're discussing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be responsible,
right,
in my opinion. And one of the major initiatives that we've got to have is we need to do some very significant reforms of the way Congress does, since it mainly does not yet do we the people's business. We the people, the first three words of the Constitution. And I have a strategy for that, which I put on the things that I've written. It's in the book anyway. And part of that is what I brought forth in my campaign 2 years ago, and I'm not campaigning anymore, so maybe you can take it with something other than a grain of salt. And that is that I made a pledge to say, I will vote the majority opinion of my district, whether I agree with it or not, as long as I can have a good sense of what that majority opinion is.
And how do you find that majority?
Well, you can very easily do that these days electronically. You can do it with instant polling, and by way of the internet. And I had somebody come on board at that time who has developed a whole way of doing this. You can do it on issues as well. In fact, that's what we're talking about, is polling people on issues, not just how they're going to vote in the next election. And the other thing is that it's another thing is to get a redefinition and to make it known that we need a redefinition of what leadership really means. To me, and I hope to many others that I can influence, leadership should mean that you have, and if you're in a position of leadership, you have a responsibility to empower others, not just yourself. And then you have to define what that means in the case of being a congressional or even a state representative. Well, one thing, which we touched on earlier when we talked about the biases in the media, is information. If people aren't getting good information, then they're just going to be misled.
How are we going to govern that? How do we govern that?
How do we govern?
How do we govern that free flow of information?
Well, you can do it as a member of Congress because you have much more of a budget and you get so little, even in the way of pay as a state rep. I'm not sure how you can do it unless you're independently wealthy, unless you want to make some sacrifices. But provided you've got the resources, as a member of Congress does, you can be providing something other than to your constituents, other than the usual self-serving congressman's newsletter and self-advertising. I mean, but that's the way, it's one of the ways members of Congress got elected. They use your money as a taxpayer to self-advertise themselves through the franking privilege, the mailing privilege. So, there's got to be a higher standard for the information that's got to be gotten out there to people about the problems that we face as Americans and we face in the district. And there's a whole slew of them. And Thomas Jefferson said, and this is on the cover of my earlier book, which is entitled "We the People," said something that don't give up on the people. The people are the basis of this republic. And if you think that there's problems with the people's opinions or votes, just make them better informed. Put better information into their hands. Well, you haven't seen that through the media. The media is playing the power game. Let's face it. The media are in the power game, not the information game.
Right.
Because they want to influence your opinion, and they want to be able to forecast your vote even before all the votes are in. They're doing that now in favor of Obama.
They have it down to a science. There's no doubt, and so that's one of the reasons why we have this show, and there are other shows that are out there that are promulgating. You know, we let the information come out, and of course we do let the people judge. And this show is designed for people to speak up.
Right.
You don't see that on the other shows. I've interviewed people, countless, that have been on other shows, other of the big media, and they didn't air it after interviewing them for 2-3 hours. Nothing got on the air. So they pulled the story, probably because it wasn't politically correct.
PC?
Yeah. So that, you know, that to me is one of the problems, is the free flow of information. That will help the citizens, but you've got to have some checks and balances on that. Who's going to watch the watchers, if you will? How do we know what information is true and accurate? And you know, it's buyer beware at this point. But you know, having seen the media in action at the Capitol, having watched people interviewed, and then watched what articles were printed, I became very, very disillusioned with our local media on many occasions. I sit on the redress committee.
Redress of grievances.
Redress of
very important committee.
Very few media are ever there, ever, and we've not gotten any good press.
I've never seen anything. I know how important that committee is. I haven't seen anything on it.
It's allowing people to expose the government if they've been abused, and if they can show through documentation that their government's not listening to them, and that needs to be expanded. But I'm very frustrated with the level of coverage, and it's almost diabolical. And I'm not going to name names at this point, but I'm very disillusioned with how it is being covered. And the reason we get involved with state and local legislature is to represent the people. And when the people are hurting, that committee is a godsend to them.
I've actually tried to help a woman who thought she was being abused by HHS. So I'm familiar.
There are countless of people that, and then what the Attorney General tells HHS is they don't have to testify at the committee, or DCYF. They don't have to testify at the committee. And if we send out notifications to certain judges, they don't have to testify at the committee. So in other words, they're insulated, and they have the Attorney General to go to bat for them and to fight for the agencies at the taxpayer's expense. We had a gentleman who was actually now running for state representative. His name is Mr. Jeff Frost. He was abused by the Attorney General. The Attorney General's office came to our committee and said, you know, we misinterpreted the law, but we make mistakes. Well, that mistake cost this gentleman $185,000 to appeal to the Supreme Court. I didn't hear much media about that. That's frustrating.
Well, getting back to the fundamental, you know, at all levels in the society that we live in, knowledge is power. And people are not being well informed.
Right. So that's one of the key things, is to fix, you know, the free flow of information.
Right. And you know, here we got a similarity between the economic side and the political side of society. If you don't got competition, then anything can go wrong.
What is the definition of fascism?
Fascism is, this is what my fear. You're asking, what do I fear? I fear that fascism could take hold in America. So it's a very important question that you raise. Fascism is where you have a politics which is beginning to resemble what we have now. We have a crony capitalism. Because fascism is where politics interweaves with the powerful economic interests who support somebody in power, and he can use that support to maintain himself in power as Hitler did.
Under the guise of too big to fail, supported by the federal government, we're going to prop up this business with your taxpayer dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And
like Solyndra.
Like Solyndra, like GE.
Like the battery company that just went under.
And your taxpayer dollars are going to go to that. And that, and the healthy competition over here is not going to get that taxpayer dollar because they're doing okay. And this company's too big to fail. And so now the federal government props up a business and makes it unfair for the one who's doing it without the federal government's money. And you brought up the name, I didn't, Hitler. That's what he did.
Well,
Mussolini.
look, that's the leading example of fascism. You raised an important question, so I'm just trying to be responsive.
But people don't understand that what's happening happened before. And they think, oh, well.
It could happen again. That's why I worry. Look.
But he's just saving jobs.
What gave the basis for the rise of Hitler? It was the Great Depression and the failure of the Weimar Republic. You know, the political failure on the one hand and the economic failure on the other hand immiserated the German middle class. They're having to roll money to a bakery in a wheelbarrow in order to buy a loaf of bread. Now, and this depression has severely cut the wealth of the American middle class and reduced the size of the American middle class. And that's the political anchor for our great democratic republic. Right. So there are parallels. I'm not trying to be a doomsayer. I'm not a doomsayer.
Right.
But if you know, they say if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
And if you can't make the cure without finding out what the problem is. And that's one of my greatest fears is that the average citizen doesn't realize that in the guise of propping up one business over another with taxpayer money is the federal government picking winners and losers and weeding out through cronyism the competition. And that's exactly what Hitler did. We have the Volkswagen today because of that. They're doing. They were masters. Great engineers. But to me, I feel that the average person doesn't see the correlation.
Well,
am I
the real
wrong?
problem with the average person, and I hate to use the word average because Americans, so-called ordinary Americans, have shown throughout history that in times of crisis they can rise to the occasion and they can become truly extraordinary.
Provided they're well informed.
Provided they're well informed, but also if they have good leadership, if they have a great orator, somebody who's has that great gift of gab that my father used to condemn and that he saw decades ago. Now it's even worse. You have somebody who's got the silver tongue at a time of crisis, and people are feeling so downtrodden. They don't feel an out except with that charismatic leader who's speaking to them with a silver tongue and is really only interested in aggrandizing his own power. Then you have a formula for disaster.
Right. What is the name of your book?
A New American Revolution, subtitle, How We the People Can Truly Take Back Our Government.
And that is on Amazon.
It's an Amazon ebook. It's very easy to find. You can easily check it out for free, and it only costs you $9.99 if you want to read it on your Kindle or your Nook or your iPad or just on your PC computer screen.
Well, we're running a little bit out of time here, so do you want to...
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine.
If I've been running on, forgive me.
No, I've actually been lecturing you. You're the professor, too.
I'm not a professor.
Well,
I'm a practicing practical economist.
Right. Are there some closing thoughts that you want to talk about?
Closing thought is this. We the people, the first three words of the Constitution, that is the key to any problem we have or crisis that we might face, and we're still at a very slow growth crisis, which could become another dip, and then we're even further down the road. I think that people have got to wake up, and I have a problem with this election because people are not being well informed. Number one, yeah, the information isn't nearly rich enough to talk about the real problems that we face. But first of all, if you're out there and you're a couch potato and you think that by electing either Mitt or Barack, you know, one or the other is going to save your butts, you better think again. You're not ordinary. You're a citizen of the greatest democratic republic in the world. We have, you know, we're the oldest constitutional democracy in the world. You know, we have a lot to be proud of, but if people don't get involved in what should be their politics, but which is not their politics, it's a politics of big money, the political pros, the big media, the political junkies. It's not the politics of the ordinary, hardworking American. And one of my messages to folks out there over and over again for many years has been, look, you can make a difference. There's lots of little ways you can make a difference. And if you join with others especially, those little ways add up.
Right.
And if you're not involved, you're just sitting on the couch watching a reality TV, which is taking you farther and farther away from the real reality we've got to face as a nation, then you're not a good citizen. And I hate to try to shame people into becoming good citizens, but I say, because there's so much, you know, greatness in this country. But it depends on the ordinary folks to take back their politics. And if they don't do that, they'll never have a better government.
It was Tip O'Neill who said all politics is local.
Yeah, but he must be rolling over in his grave because the turnout in elections now rises with the level of the office. Local politics is really depreciated.
But that's, in my opinion, if people get involved with their school boards, if they get involved with their aldermen,
exactly,
if they get involved with the PTO, their zoning board, their planning board, their city council, their mayor's race, you're going to get a good picture of what this country needs.
And you know, and I know, you look at those local ballots, there's too many positions which are not only not contested, but for which there's not even a candidate.
Right.
So there's lots of things that people can do.
If there's any to blame, we have to look in the mirror first, but we just can't relinquish it to the big boys who have all the money, who are going to tell us which way to go, because we're just setting ourselves up for slavery.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for coming on the show. One more time, tell our viewers your book, the name of your book. And
it's called A New American Revolution. And by the way, the R has parentheses around it because I don't want to be thought of as inciting bloody revolution. That's the wrong way to go.
Right.
But a new American revolution, how we, the people, can truly take back our government. But first of all, we've got to take back our politics.
Right. Well, I want to thank people for watching Speak Up. And as you can see, we can talk about many different topics here on this show. If you have a passion and an issue that you want to talk about, we definitely welcome it. And until next week, Kevin Avard, and we'll see you then.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.